The rain hadn't stopped since early morning, tapping on rooftops and windows like a slow, steady metronome marking the beginning of something unexpected. Before we continue, please take some time to subscribe to Dailydose, like, and share this video. Inside a quiet hospital room, lit only by the gray light of a rainy October day, Judith lay exhausted but glowing, gazing down at the two tiny faces nestled against her chest. Rose and Lily, two perfect little girls, warm and breathing softly. She'd carried them for over 9 months, every flutter and turn inside her belly tied to this very moment. But they weren't hers. Not really. Judith was a surrogate tease, had agreed to carry these babies for her best friend, Angela, and Angela's husband, Brad. The delivery was hard, but Judith hadn't minded. The moment she saw the couple walk into her hospital room, eyes wet with joy and disbelief, it had all been worth it. Angela, Angie, as Judith had always called, harassed to the bed, arms trembling, and reached out for the children she thought she'd never have. Brad followed behind, silent but smiling, overwhelmed by the sight. Judith looked at her friend with soft eyes and asked, "Do you want to hold them?" Angie nodded before bursting into tears. As the couple cradled their daughters for the first time, Judith watched from her bed, aching but proud. She remembered the day it all began, how Angie had called her, nervous, stammering, asking Judith to come over without saying why. Judith had known something was wrong by the shakiness in her friend's voice. That evening, sitting in Angie's warm, comfortable living room, Judith learned a truth that had broken her heart. Angie and Brad couldn't conceive naturally. Despite trying every method and getting every test, their dream of having a child remained unfulfilled. But there was one final option. "We want to ask you something," Angie had said gently, her hand covering Brad's. "Would you consider being our surrogate?" Judith had sat there for a moment, quiet. She had never thought of having kids herself, never even tried. Single by choice, happy with her freedom, she had always imagined her life following a different rhythms, spontaneous, independent, untethered. But this was Angie, her best friend since high school, a woman she loved like family. Judith didn't need time to think. "Yes," she said simply, and so began a journey that neither of them could have predicted. The IVF process was explained by Dr. Matthews, a kind and experienced physician who had helped deliver Angie's sister's baby years before. The process was supposed to be straightforward: fertilize Angie's eggs with Brad's sperm in a lab, then implant the embryo in Judith's womb. To increase the chances, multiple embryos would be implanted. The odds were low. The doctor had warned many embryos don't survive. But something extraordinary happened. Not only did the embryos take Judith was pregnant with twins, the pregnancy was uneventful, even joyful. The bond between Judith and Angie deepened during those months, their friendship growing stronger with each ultrasound, each nervous hospital visit, each whispered reassurance that everything would be okay. Judith began to feel something unexpected stirring inside her, something beyond friendship, beyond responsibility. It was a kind of tenderness she hadn't expected toward the tiny lives growing within her. And now, here they were. The babies had arrived safely, healthy, beautiful, Rose and Lily. Judith smiled as Angie kissed her on the forehead, whispering thank you through her tears. Brad offered a quiet handshake, too choked up to speak. The names were chosen, papers signed. The babies were officially Angie and Brad's children. Judith was wheeled out of the hospital later that day, waving goodbye as her best friend drove home with her new family. That night, back in her small one-bedroom apartment, Judith stood in the doorway for a long time. Everything looked the same, but she didn't feel the same. She made tea, curled up on the couch, and tried to sleep. But a strange ache gnawed at her chest. She missed them. She missed them in a way she didn't know was possible. She told herself it was just hormones, just the aftermath of a long, exhausting process. But the ache didn't go away. Over the next few days, she kept in touch with Angie, brief check-ins, photos of the twins, little updates. Judith smiled through them all, even when her heart pulled her back to the hospital room. She didn't want to overstep. This was what she had agreed to. This was the right thing. Then, one evening, just as she returned from visiting Angie and the twins, Judith noticed her landline blinking. A voicemail. She pressed play. "Judith," came the voice of Dr. Matthews, hurried and low. "Please call me back immediately. It's important. Please, as soon as you can." Her heart jumped. She dialed right away. The doctor answered instantly. "Judith," he said, breathless, "I need you to come in. Alone." The clock ticked quietly as Judith stood in the nursery, the soft glow of a nightlight casting long shadows on the walls. The girls lay in peaceful slumber, oblivious to the adult world's turmoil. Judith's gaze moved slowly between them, two tiny souls, so similar in appearance, yet so different in origin. She reached down, gently brushing a curl from one girl's forehead. A tear slipped down her cheek, but her hand didn't tremble anymore. There was clarity now, no more confusion, no more guessing, just love. She whispered, "Sleep well, my darlings," and slowly turned to face the couple watching her from the doorway. Angie stepped forward first, her eyes red, her breathing uneven. Brad followed closely, his arm wrapped around his wife's shoulder. No words were exchanged for several seconds, only silence, thick with emotion. Judith finally broke it. "I just needed to see them one more time, before I fully let go." But Angie shook her head. "You don't have to let go, Judith, not completely. You're family now, whether by blood or by love." Her voice cracked. "You're her mother, and you'll always be their aunt. That's not changing." Judith smiled faintly. "I don't want to confuse her. When the time comes and she's old enough to understand, you can tell her everything. But for now, let her just be your daughter." Brad nodded solemnly. "We'll raise them right, together. You'll always be in her life." That night, the three of them sat together in the living room, drinking tea in quiet companionship. No one said much. They didn't have to. A new kind of bond had formed stronger than the friendship they had shared before. Now they were linked by something deeper, by choice, by sacrifice, and by unconditional love. As time passed, the arrangement grew into something beautiful. Judith didn't disappear. Quite the opposite. She visited often, always bringing little gifts, or helping out when the girls were sick or teething. She read bedtime stories, kissed boo-boos, and attended birthdays, dressed in silly costumes to make the girls laugh. And as the twins grew older, they sensed the special connection. They didn't know the details yet, but they knew that Aunt Judith was different. They clung to her whenever she came around, eyes lighting up at her presence, tiny arms wrapping tightly around her leg. One spring morning, as the cherry blossoms bloomed outside the house, Angie found Judith sitting in the backyard, holding one of the girls on her lap. She was teaching her how to blow bubbles. The little one's giggles filled the air. Angie watched for a moment, her eyes glistening, before stepping outside with a camera. "Say Bubble Squad!" They both turned and grinned as Angie captured the momentum memory frozen in time. Later, that photo would sit framed on the mantel, right beside a drawing one of the girls had made at preschool. 3 stick figures holding hands beneath a giant sun. The girls had drawn themselves, Angie and Judith. Years passed. The truth was eventually shared, gently and lovingly. Judith had always known that this day would come, and when it did, she was prepared. The girls were around 10 years old when Angie and Brad sat them down and explained everything. There were questions, of course wide-eyed and innocent, but there was no anger, no confusion, just awe. "You mean Aunt Judith is my real mom?" one of the girls asked. Judith took a deep breath, then nodded with a soft smile. "Biologically, yes, but I chose to let you grow up with your sister and your parents. I wanted what was best for you." The girl blinked, then smiled. "That's kind of cool. I have 2 moms." The other twin chimed in, "Yeah, you're like our superhero aunt." And just like that, the storm of uncertainty that had once shaken Judith's world gave way to something far more powerful. Peace. In time, Judith met someone special. A quiet gentleman named Peter, who worked as a history teacher at the local college. He had no children of his own, but welcomed the twins with open arms, understanding their unique family bond without judgment. They married in a small garden ceremony, with the twins serving as flower girls and Angie as maid of honor. At the reception, Brad raised a toast. "To Judith," he said, "who showed us what true love looks like. She gave us the greatest gift anyone could offer, and then stayed to become the heart of our family. The crowd clapped. Judith cried. Peter beamed. The years continued to unfold like chapters in a long and meaningful story. The twins graduated from high school, then college. Judith and Angie grew older together, two friends whose bond had weathered life's most unexpected twist. And when Judith finally became a grandmother herself, through her biological daughter, she held the baby in her arms and smiled. She whispered, just like she had many years ago, "Sleep well, my darling."